Hi everyone, welcome. This is Connie Jaime Lujan at Colorado State University with the Access Center with primary responsibilities for the Community for Excellence Partner Development and Engagement. I work with all the wonderful partners throughout the state who send students to Colorado State University and become part of our Community for Excellence. I'm excited to be here today to help do this re-recording. Most of you know that we did this recording on Tuesday, March the 26th, and are now needing to redo it because the audio quality wasn't very good. So we're going to talk today about quick tips for 2019-2020 award letters here at Colorado State University, and I'm really excited to have an expert with us, Fabian Garcia, who's the Assistant Director for Student Access within our Office of Financial Aid here at Colorado State University. So with that, Fabian, I'll let you take over.
Thank you, Connie. I'm happy to be here. So for today's agenda, we're going to be looking at some of the guiding principles that helped us shape this new offer letter for the 1920 academic year. And we will also highlight how we got to its current format, looking at prior offer letters from previous years and also some key collaborations that took place within the past 2 years that really allowed us to create the existing offer letters for the 1920 academic year. And then finally, we'll look in depth into the actual offer letter itself. We'll break down each particular item. That way there's a better understanding in terms of what it actually encompasses. So starting out, I do want to highlight our guiding principles that influence how we got to this current offer letter. And by guiding principles, I'm referring to the things that influence us as an office to make sure that we're striving to serve as best as we can our students. We are influenced by our mission statement, our CSU principles of community, and also our land-grant mission here at CSU with the obligation to really help all our students in the state of Colorado. So all of these three things, along with amazing leadership from the office, really influence the offer letter that we have today. About 2 years ago, we were fortunate enough to have, at the time, our Director of Financial Aid participate at a national conference where he came or was in contact with folks from the U Aspire group. These individuals do a lot of work with college readiness, specifically with helping students who are in high school with information regarding financial literacy and financial resources to make sure that students are making the best decision for them with an emphasis on financial fit and financial comprehension. And they use various forms to do this. So they focus on student advising. They do work with training options for a lot of professionals, both at the college level and high school levels as well. And finally, they do focus on policy and systemic changes as well. So they do a lot within this approach in terms of access for students. And to give you a little bit more context about U Aspire, so this organization got started back in the 1980s, and they come out of Boston, the Boston area. And at the time, they were primarily working with like I said, high school students in terms of the college readiness, specifically with the financial aid information at hand. And from there, they started branching out to the San Francisco Bay Area. And finally, they saw a necessity nationwide to do more trainings, to train the educators, in a sense, to make sure that students were getting the best information possible moving forward. Now, as a result of all the work that U Aspire has done throughout the years, they have an immense wealth in terms of the type of resources that students could really benefit from. So specifically in terms of the financial aid piece, because they have been working with thousands of students in the last couple of years, they've come across thousands of offer letters, award letters from various universities. So we were able to touch base and collaborate with U Aspire and look at what other universities, colleges were doing across the country in terms of how are they communicating the information from offices of financial aid. In addition to that, U Aspire was able to come on campus and we were able to work with them and collect a lot of data. So what we did is we gathered together a lot of focus groups with students in mind. We were able to get a lot of data from our students and staff as well in the form of questionnaires. And once we compiled all that information, U Aspire was able to make a series of recommendations to the Office of Financial Aid here at CSU. So just to give you a little bit more context, for the next 3 slides, we're going to show you offer letters or award letters from the 2017-2018 academic year, and this is prior to us working with folks from U-Aspire. So if you look at this particular offer letter, or in this case what we called it back then, award letter, it can be somewhat confusing if you have no experience with financial aid. So for example, someone like myself who is familiar with some of the financial aid processes, looking at this makes sense. But what we're failing to see is that not everyone is operating or looking at this from the same financial aid lens. So it's not very comprehensive, not very inclusive to folks who have no experience with financial aid. So for example, you can't really assess truly what the costs are going to be for students and their families. Even looking at the granted scholarship section, everything is compiled there. It's not clearly defined. There's a lot of financial aid terminology, jargon, that's not easy to digest. Similarly, using this example as well from 2017-18, same theme throughout. A lot of terminology not clearly defined. It's not necessarily easy for the student to interpret what type of aid they're receiving, whether it's need-based aid, gift aid, aid that they have to repay back, that sort of information. And finally, it's not very clear from the student perspective what is going to be the net cost just from looking at this information. And similarly to the other two slides, again, same themes throughout. Very little information for the student and the family to be able to disseminate clearly what's taking place with their financial aid picture and how it corresponds to ultimately their bottom line here at CSU. So with all the collaboration that I mentioned before from folks in Inspire, with all the hard work that folks in our leadership office, our systems area, processing area, client services area did, we were able to come up with the offer letter for the 1920 academic year. So the offer letter for the 1920 academic year is a series of pages. In essence, it's a booklet with a total of 4 pages. This initial page that you're looking at would be the greeting page that the student sees. On here, we have made it so that the preferred name for the student shows up as opposed to any other information. And again, we want to validate the student. We want to affirm students' identities. And you want to make sure that they know that CSU is committed to them. Along with that piece, we've also incorporated some CSU data that allows the student to interpret and get better ideas to some of the great things that CSU is doing. Okay. So once you move into the actual second and third pages, which is the inside of the booklet in essence, we're going to break down this information. It's going to consist of various different sections consisting of a new glossary and some other things. So let's take a look. This is what the inside is going to look like. So if you can imagine the offer letter, this is going to be folded in half. When you open up the offer letter itself, you'll be able to see these two, or this section completely spread out. But we're going to identify each particular section here through this presentation. We're going to start with the estimated cost of attendance. We're going to move to financial aid, estimated bill, and then the bottom sections there. Okay. So let's start with the estimated cost of attendance. So if you recall from the other 2 or 3 offer letters that we showed from 2017-18, it's somewhat difficult to discern what the estimated cost of attendance is going to be for that given year. What we've also done in this particular section is we've broken down the estimated cost of attendance, including direct expenses and indirect expenses, along with actually defining what those terms are. So if you look at the top section of this particular page, we actually provide those definitions for direct costs and indirect costs. Hopefully, being able to clarify this process for families who are going through this for the first time, or even who have seen this before, but again, to be as transparent as possible with folks who are looking at this information. At the bottom of this particular section as well, we've provided some additional context to some of the information. So for example, if you look at the resident tuition and fees, there's a little anecdote that if you look at the bottom section, it gives you more of a definition as to where these figures are coming from. So as we move towards the middle section, here's where we actually are going to break down any financial aid that the students are receiving. Okay? So we're going to, in the top portion, include any of the free money that the student's going to be receiving, including grants and scholarships, and we're going to list each one. From there, we're going to do a calculation to let students know what the net cost is going to be after these funds have been applied to the student's account. At the bottom section of this financial aid section, you'll be able to see the student portion of the offer letter as well, which we know we did this intentionally because oftentimes what was happening is students would oftentimes misinterpret loans as need-based aid or free money, and they would assume they had more aid coming their way than they actually did. But again, our goal with this particular section is break down the offer letter itself, really highlight what the net cost is going to be with all the segments of the grants and scholarship sections being visible there, and also a very clear distinction between the grants and scholarship section and the loans section. Now at the top of the page as well, we've added a link that students can go to see what it takes to maintain financial aid eligibility. So this is another piece that we got feedback from our students and other folks through U Aspire, where oftentimes they weren't aware that there are some items that students have to maintain while they're here at CSU in order to be eligible for future financial aid. And by that I mean specifically alluding to their GPA and their completion rate. So here we have a direct link where folks can go and actually look at this information more in depth. Now the final section is the estimated bill with all the, basically the financial aid, direct expenses and indirect expenses put together. Okay, so we're going to highlight the first section, which is the grants and scholarships. We're going to subtract the information, and then there we have the option if the student wanted to pursue loans, what that would look like for the remaining bill. So just to be more transparent, what the bill might look like with the actual grants and scholarships being applied if students are receiving those types of awards, or and also what it might look like with the loans being applied as well. Now this does not include any indirect expenses. This is only looking at the direct expenses here at CSU. Okay? And we'll talk a little bit more about how students can use this information to create a budget for the upcoming year as well, and that's going to be on the last page of this offer letter. Now on the bottom portion of the page 2, you'll be able to see a section that says other resources. This particular section we want to include, or we will be highlighting aid offers that don't necessarily apply directly to the balance right away, but also opportunities that students can take advantage of to helpfully use for supplemental forms of income, such as it is the case with work study. Now in this particular case as well, we might also potentially show the Parent Plus loan. And the reason we might include the Parent Plus loan in this particular section and not the other student loan section is that we want to create a clear distinction between what a student loan is versus what a parental loan is as well. Again, to hopefully not confuse the students in believing that this is aid that is really not. And as I said before, we want to be as transparent as possible with the information that we're presenting. Financial aid can be somewhat jargony, especially considering the terminology, and folks might be encountering this information for the first time. So we wanted to provide a glossary with some of the terms that are reoccurring throughout this offer letter that folks can reference throughout. So this is where most of these terminologies are going to be represented in this glossary section. Now if you turn to the back page, the last page, page 4, as I was referring earlier, this is a good tool that students can utilize, students and their families can utilize to actually incorporate a nice annual budget for the 1920 academic year. And this is where students can incorporate their direct expenses, their estimated indirect expenses, along with their financial aid to get a better projected picture in terms of the overall financial picture for the 1920 academic year. Okay. In addition to that, we do list several steps for students to follow if they are wanting to pursue loans, where they can access some of this information online. So for example, students have the ability to view their offer letters through their student portal called RamWeb. It's not going to be displayed in this exact format as the current offer letter that we're showing, but all the information that I'm going over right now should be available for students to view in their RamWeb portal. Okay. Now, in the bottom section of the annual budget worksheet, you do see a paragraph that is referencing the prepayment plan. That is a new tool that's also been implemented for the past year that students and families can also pursue in addition to some of the financial aid that we mentioned before. So just more resources that students can pursue to hopefully make CSU attainment a reality. And finally, the bottom section of page 4, you're going to see a general timeline that's going to follow. So specifically when charges are going to be assessed for students, when financial aid is going to be dispersed, and the due dates for both fall and spring semesters. And we do get quite a bit of questions related to these items. We want to be, again, as transparent as possible in terms of what's going to happen next with the financial aid process, along with an opportunity for folks to reach out to us. If they do happen to be near the CSU campus or are visiting, they're always welcome to stop by on a drop-in basis during our normal office hours, which typically are from 9 to 5. They're also welcome to email us or even give us a call over the phone. What I do recommend here, folks, is I would prioritize the communication to probably be more towards the drop-in or the phone route as opposed to email. Just thinking of the accessibility and making sure that we get to folks in a timely manner. So I definitely recommend those two avenues versus email. What I do recommend as well is if you do have families reaching out to our office, specifically parents, what I would advise is have, if possible, both student and parent there with them when they are reaching out to our office over the phone, just so that we can have a full conversation regarding the student's financial aid. And also, what we're finding is students who are aware of the financial aid process, along with parents who are aware of the financial aid process together, the financial aid transition tends to be a little bit easier than folks who are going about it in a segmented way in that regard. So I definitely encourage folks to, if you are working with students, if they have those support systems at home, to tackle this as a team.
Fabian, I'd just like to add that a lot of our partners work directly with the students, especially if the families don't are monolingual, Spanish speaking, or one language only in the household for parents. The partners are definitely welcome to call into financial aid. Because of FERPA reasons, you do have to have the student with you at the time. Financial aid also has several staff members who speak Spanish, so I think that's another option that families can look at and feel comfortable with.
Yeah, absolutely, Connie. We do have, at least as of right now, about 4 full-time staff members that have the ability to speak Spanish fluently. But absolutely right. If you, especially you staff members are going to be reaching out to our office, make sure students are there with you, and that way we can have a full conversation and get a better idea as to what's taking place with that student's account. Now, another resource that you can look into that also breaks down the offer letter for the 1920 academic year in greater depth is this resource that the Office of Admissions has actually put out. So they've actually created an infographic that I've included the link here, where students, families, and staff can actually go to see the various sections explained in great detail. Again, this is put together by the Office of Admissions, and it's a great resource for students, families, and anyone else who's interested in interpreting the offer letter in greater depth.
So Fabian, I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the questions I thought of is the students will only receive this type of award letter, or offer letter, once when they're brand new to Colorado State University, right? They won't receive it their second or third year here at CSU. Yeah,
that's correct. So the offer letters that go out in the mail, in the physical mail, only go out to first-time incoming students. From there, once they continue here at CSU, they'll be able to have access to all the information that I covered exclusively on their RamWeb portal, that student portal that CSU has created for students.
So this link is great because I'm sure the Office of Admissions will keep it updated, so that way if you as a partner have not seen an award letter for Colorado State University, you can definitely go to this link and see the detail. And then from year to year, students just remembering the pieces that were so helpful their first time at CSU can go to this link as well to help with understanding the different parts and pieces. So I think this is a great tool that can be used from for year after year.
And again, I do want to add that all of these changes are coming from a position of trying to make this more of an inclusive process. We want to make sure that folks can interpret the information that they're seeing, that we're more transparent with the information that we're providing, and that it's just more accessible, inclusive process for everyone. We understand that folks interpret information different ways. This is just one of the changes that we have made, but it's not the only change that we have made. There's other ways to get this information as well. Like I mentioned, students, families, staff are always welcome to reach out to our office directly for any questions that they have as well.
So Fabian, another question that we received during the actual live video conference that we do with partners online, they asked about the ability to show our financial aid offer letter to their schools. So some partners are sponsored by a school, a community college or another university or four-year college. That was something that you definitely said they could definitely do, and this infographic would be a great way to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. This is, I think, the most clear way to get at the information that most students and families need. It breaks down the information very clearly, really highlights each individual section, similar to what I just did, in a clear, concise way. So it's a great resource that folks can look at to be able to interpret the offer letters that are going to be going out.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Fabian, for the good detailed information at Colorado State University's 1920 offer letter. Very helpful. It's really exciting, the great work that Colorado State University has done. I love to brag about the wonderful things that our office does to make sure that students and families and partners have good information so students can make good decisions about what's going to financially work for them well. The other thing I like to do is just share a few other resources for partners to efficiently compare award letters or offer letters. One thing I think that's helpful is that we've given you this information about Colorado State University. What's a challenge is that not all schools do their award letters the same. So sometimes you feel like you're comparing apples to oranges instead of apples to apples or oranges to oranges. So I know the Department of Education has been working for years to try to figure out a way to do that well. The shopping sheet on each school helps. The net price calculator helps as well. Some other that are great is also through UAspire. Fabian mentioned that their office has worked really closely with UAspire to really enhance their award letter. That's one thing I would also encourage your schools to look at. If they can work with UAspire and see if there's a way that UAspire can help them. At the time that our financial aid office worked with UAspire, it was a pilot program, and so I don't believe we incurred any cost. Now they may be a cost because they're a nonprofit organization, so they have to survive, as many of you know that very, very well. And so definitely feel free to contact UAspire to see if it's something that your school can utilize to enhance the award letter to make it easy to understand and definitely inclusive. In the meantime, they do have some great tools online that help partners and individuals support students in understanding the award letter. They're listed on your screen. They have an award letter analyzer that really makes sure students know what each section is indicating and some questions to ask. In fact, that's number 2, student questions for the award letter review. What are some things that students should be looking for in the award letter, or when they contact the financial aid office that they're wanting to go to, what questions should they ask? And then they have an annotated financial aid shopping sheet so the student knows what each section is trying to tell them the best that they can. And they do provide training for staff, so I know that the KIPP Colorado Schools has contracted with UAspire, and they do get training on information as far as the FAFSA, the award letter, and everything in helping students navigate the financial aid process well. And then number 5, as we mentioned earlier, they do assist financial aid offices in redesigning the offer letter. So that's definitely an option to look into. Again, we're not certain if there's a charge for that at this time, but UAspire can tell you that better than we can. Another great tool that I've found out about, and it's mostly because the individual who's helping with this initiative is a colleague that I really trust and admire and think is involved in another nonprofit organization called 6UP, and they have a tool called Future Prime. The website is on the bottom of the screen, https://www.futureprime, all one word, .com. If you go to this website, you can apply to have access to this Future Prime tool. And what it does is it allows you as a partner to have an online tool that will allow the student to have access as well. And the student puts in all their award letter information, and then you can compare information. So I know a lot of times as programs, we're asking our students to bring in the award letter. We're sitting at our desk or maybe the family's kitchen table and comparing award letters to say, okay, let's look at what the costs are, what's direct, what's indirect, what are grants, what are scholarships, what are loans, and really trying to get to the bottom line of what will be coming out of the family's pocket, either directly or maybe through a parent loan or summer jobs or graduation money or something of that nature. This tool will do this all for you. And the student has access to put in all the information they've gotten from the different schools, and then you have access to see that as their counselor, advisor, or high school support person. And these 4 quadrants, what they do is they show you each school. And the top right quadrant that's dark purple and has a red circle is actually where you want to see the students land. This quadrant is showing that these students will actually are going to a school that has good placement rates, the students successfully find jobs, and they have good money to offer students. So that's where you want students to land, and these are the schools that they're recommending students give strong consideration. The bottom left lower quadrant that says lower FP score are schools that are concerning. They do not have high placement rates for college graduates, and they also do not have good money that supports students in graduating well with low loan debt or well at all because the finances were a challenge. So really encourage you to go to the Future Prime website, log in, and get permission to utilize it, and then your students will be able to utilize it and do things well. The other thing I remember from the U Aspire website, they do something similar. They provide a doc that you can use for similar information, and I know that the KIPP Collegiate Schools were mentioning that they're going to put theirs as a Google Doc, so that way their college advisors and students and family members have access to the same Google Doc